guys, so I'm here today to do my June reading wrap up. You know the drill, so without further ado, let's get into the books, shall we? The first book I read was a children's poetry picture book called The Fire Horse. Now, I do wish I had the physical copy to show you here so I could show you some of the illustrations, but I showed it in a haul video not that long ago, so I'll link that if you want to see a little bit of what's inside. And this is, like I mentioned, a children's picture book which has illustrated 3 classic Russian children's poems. Now, I really enjoyed reading this. It was translated from Russian into English and I thought it was a very interesting reading experience as these are kind of classic children's poems, but I can't say it completely blew me away. I think the first poem was my favourite, but in particular the third one fell a little bit flat. And I don't know if that's got something to do with the translation, and I don't want to criticise the translation because I can't say it's a bad translation having not read the Russian, but I don't know if just in English it just didn't translate as well into quite as engaging a child's poem or child's picture book. But I thought the illustrations were absolutely stunning and I still enjoyed reading this one. I just can't say that the poems themselves completely blew me away. So I haven't finished a lot of things this month, but there does seem to be a little bit of a children's literature vibe because I did read or listen to an audiobook of a children's book, and that is Coraline by Neil Gaiman. This is my 4th Neil Gaiman book, I think, and I've read some of his other children's literature, the Graveyard book in particular, and I adored Coraline. I think this book was worth all of the hype. The audiobook itself was also fantastic. It was narrated by Neil Gaiman and he just did a phenomenal job, and there was these really creepy sing-song voices used for the rats, and the whole thing had this perfect children's creepy vibe, like something like Roald Dahl's children's literature, like The Witches, a children's book, but so unsettling and unnerving, and so well written and so clever, and really just ignites all of the feelings and sensations in you that it hopes to do. It's beautifully executed. It's about a little girl called Coraline who discovers that on the other side of her new home exists a world almost exactly like her building that she lives in with her parents, including another set of parents called her other mother and other father, and they look almost identical to her parents except that they have buttons for eyes. And naturally this is a little bit of a creepy other world that is trying to kind of steal Coraline away from her real world, and I love this book. If you haven't read it but have heard amazing things about it, have been a little bit dubious about whether those things could stand up to a reading, well, I think they really do. I've never seen the film, but I'll definitely be giving it a watch at some point, and I love the book. I really, really did. I would re-listen to the audiobook. A creepy book that didn't quite impress me as much, unfortunately, was The Case Against Satan by Ray Russell. I think I did mention this in a video that it kind of disappointed me. It started off so well and kind of tailed off. This is a kind of classic horror novel about a exorcism of a young girl that's been acting incredibly strangely, and the church decide that she's probably possessed by the devil and attempt to exorcise it whilst uncovering secrets that might have led up to what is going on with her. And I really liked the way it was written. It's a writing style I really like. I thought that was really enjoyable, and like I said, it started off really well. I would certainly read more of Ray Russell because I enjoyed his writing style and I think the concept was interesting. I think it started off well, but unfortunately it really petered off. I think the ending kind of turned into what's the most disgusting thing I could use to shock the reader, as opposed to really sinister, unsettling, clever creepiness that you weren't expecting or made you think. It just was a little bit like shock factor, and not in a good way. I really think the ending let it down, but like I said, I would like to read more by Ray Russell. I do actually own a collection of his short stories, which I think may in a way be a better format for his work. It doesn't require the same kind of conclusions that a novel or a novella does, so I might prefer those, hopefully at least. And lastly, I have to mention a collection of short stories, kind of. It's a collection of fairy tales, and that is The Turnip Princess and Other Newly Discovered Fairy Tales. These were fairy tales that were discovered quite recently in a never before read 1850s German manuscript. And it's been a while since I have read a full collection of fairy tales. I read Grimm's when I was younger, I read Italo Calvino's Italian folk tales, and I've read a few others as well, but it has been years since I've just read one bind up of fairy tales, and I forgot how pleasurable it can be. Despite the repetitive nature of fairy tales, I find there's something really compelling about a collection of fairy tales. They're all very short and you just want to read another and another and another, and I definitely had that experience reading this collection. They were very dark, like Grimm's Brothers. There's no, you know, sanitized Disney elements to these fairy tales, and for me actually I felt like there was quite a few unique elements to these stories, and I don't know if that's just because I haven't read, you know, 20 different collections of fairy tales and it's been a few years since I read one. And that's also not to say that there weren't stories that really resembled stories I'd read. I mean, there was a very, very, very Cinderella-esque story in there, but I felt like there was enough interesting elements I hadn't necessarily encountered to keep me interested. There was lots of mermaid stories, which I thought was fun, and another thing that stood out to me was the number of characters that were called Hans, and it's got me really keen to pick up some more collections of fairy tales in the near future. Those are all the things I've finished though recently. I'm in the middle of quite a few things. I think I mentioned it in my last currently reading video, but I'm just not exactly rushing to finish things at the moment, and I'm quite happy jumping around between books. It's just the mood I'm in, and that's okay. So I hope you enjoyed this video regardless of how many books were in it. If you have any thoughts of the books in this video, I'd love to hear them, and until next time guys, happy reading. I'll see you all again soon. Bye!